Hey everyone, I'm Ermysenigma, welcome back to my channel and welcome to Monster Analysis. Up for analysis today is Sir Automatronicus. Kai the Eradicator had his blacksmith build Sir Automatronicus to serve as his mechanical squire on his many conquests. This steam-powered machine may not be that agile, ouch, that means he's going to be slow, so great, that means he's going to be a powerful attacker. Here we have Sir Auto. By the way, for the remainder of this video, I'm going to be referring to this monster as Sir Auto, sometimes just Auto. I don't know, sometimes I will say the full name, but anyways, here we have him as a child, teen, adult. And overall, like I usually find myself saying, I really enjoy this monster design, but design is one thing, let's move on over to stats. And before diving into stats, you should know that as of the time recording this video, there are a total of 27 Metal Legendary monsters. So I'm going to be comparing Sir Auto to the remaining 26 Metal Legendary monsters. And thus, Sir Auto has a power of 3,465, which actually puts him in 14th place. And I know that 14th place seems rather low, considering there's 27 Metal Legendary monsters. He's like right in the middle of it all, but this is actually a pretty high power. The thing about metal monsters is that there are 10 monsters that have a power of over 3,500. So it's kind of hard to get a high place as a metal monster just because of how powerful they tend to be. His life, on the other hand, he boasts an impressive 31,667, which actually puts him in 4th place. So far we have a pretty strong monster with a really tanky life. And unfortunately, when that is the case, when we have high power and high life, and like the description mentioned, he isn't that agile. A speed of 3,377, this puts him in 20th place along with monsters like Roxanne and Mega Polaris. So yes, this monster is rather slow. Now you can argue that doesn't matter because if you use him as an attacker, most of the time you have another monster on your team to immobilize the enemy, and then your attacker is just there to attack the enemy. And while that is a fair and valid argument, I would say it's still nice if this attacker could have been faster. Especially when we take a look at his trait. He's immune to burning, which is a rather odd trait to have for a metal monster. This actually makes him the first metal legendary monster to be immune to burning. And it's honestly not that good of a trait to have. In terms of deny, metal monsters can either possess you or stun you, and honestly I think a majority of metal monsters, whether they be attackers or deniers, most of them tend to have at least a single target stun skill. So it's way better to have a trait like immune to stun or something like harden. And in terms of this monster not being immune to possession, that's actually fine because this monster has quite a few self skills. And when a monster has a self skill, it's pretty much like they're immune to possession, because instead of wasting the turn recharging, you can use that self skill so you don't attack your own team and give yourself some benefits. And so that's all I really have to say about the trait. Fire, Iron, and Hammer, Blacksmith, Heat are the default skills, nothing interesting. Let's move on to the special. K's Hardening. Target heals by 100%, gives a 100% shield to target, may give double damage to an ally, and so strangely enough this ultimate skill is actually a self skill that heals all of your life, gives yourself a full life shield, and you get double damage. And I am not a fan of the skill whatsoever. When I think of an ultimate skill, I think about a skill that's gonna make or break a game. You know, I think about a skill that's gonna like wipe out the enemy team in one hit, at least wipe out one enemy monster in one hit. If it's going to be a supportive skill or a self skill, it better be something like Mirror for 2 turns, protection, 100% life shield. In my opinion, it should do a lot to prevent the enemy from targeting your other teammates. But that isn't the case with this ultimate attack. I think if this skill would have also given you protection, it could have been a lot nicer, because now you would have had full life, you have a full life shield, you have double damage, the enemy single attacks are going to be directed to Sir Auto, but unfortunately that's not the case. And furthermore, just keep in mind that this monster can still be stunned, he can still be frozen, and he can still be possessed. So overall, as far as ultimate skills go, I'm really not impressed by this. So anyways, moving on over to skills group 1, we have 2 Volcane Teachings, Hardening, and Diagonal Peen Hammer. And I think the only skill worth mentioning is Hardening. This is a self skill where your monster heals by 30%, and it removes all negative status effects from itself. Now the reason I like this skill in particular is because it only costs 27 stamina, and it has no cooldown, which means you can spam the skill as much as you need to. Let's just say that you're facing a Mechamancer who starts the game off with AoE possession, and supposing you took quite a bit of damage before your turn, you can use Hardening to recover 30% of your life. And let's say on the following turn Mechamancer uses a single possession on Sir Auto. Well, assuming you take more damage, you can use Hardening again. Now of course there is a problem in that that's going to cost you 54 stamina, maybe one turn you should recharge, but if you need that life recovery, this skill really helps you. On top of that, if you were to get some negative effect like bleeding or poison, blind or daze, you can remove that negative debuff. So this skill could very much well be worth running. And moving on over to skills group 2, we have Waylon the Smith. So this is a special base skill that deals 45 damage to a single enemy monster, it costs 27 stamina, and it has a 1 turn cooldown. Now the thing I don't like about this skill, it's only a 50% chance to stun or daze. Now considering it is 2 effects, most likely one of them will land. I think it's like a 75% chance that one of them lands, but still, overall this skill isn't that great. Especially because of that low damage. 45 damage is not what you're after. You're going to see that in skills group 3, he has a way better skill, so completely forget about this one. And moving on over to Annealing, target heals by 40%, may apply damage boost to ally, requires cooldown. So here we have another self skill that costs 27 stamina, however this time it has a 2 turn cooldown. but this skill does heal you by 40%, so that's 10% more than last time, and it also gives your monster a damage boost, so the next attack is going to be 50% stronger. Well, actually, you're going to be 50% stronger for the next 2 turns, so both of your next 2 attacks will actually be 50% stronger. And this skill could definitely be worth running, especially over the one from skills group 1, just because of that damage boost. If you think about a situation where you do get possessed on the first turn, let's say you're going up against a hackster and he hacks you on that first turn, you can use this skill primarily just to give you that damage boost, and then on the following turn, you can use one of your strong skills to finish off the enemy monster in one hit. And I've yet to discuss skills group 3, but just know that this monster has a special base 60 damage skill and a metal base 75 damage skill. So this monster is really powerful, and once again, this skill could give you that little edge. It could give you that extra damage you need to wipe out the enemy in one hit, especially if you don't necessarily have the highest runes. And as for the last skill in skills group 2, we have Cross-Peen Hammer. Deals heavy metal damage, maced on target, requires cooldown. So here we have a metal based single target skill that deals 55 damage to a single enemy monster. It costs 31 stamina and it has a high 3-turn cooldown for a skill that just stuns. It's not even a special based skill that stuns, it's a metal based skill that stuns. And as far as the skill itself, I honestly don't like it too much. It's metal based instead of special based. It's 55 damage, which isn't that high. 31 stamina seems a little too high for me, and the 3-turn cooldown is just way too high, just for a skill that stuns. But like I always say, you never know when it can come in handy. You might just find yourself in a situation where you wish you could stun the enemy, and if you don't have any stun skills, well, you're out of luck. And furthermore, as I already mentioned, this monster has a 75 metal based attack. In what situation aren't you going to be able to one-hit the enemy monster with a 75 metal based attack? And if you have the option between stunning the enemy monster or taking it out in one hit, wouldn't you rather go with taking out the enemy monster in one hit? That way it's no longer a threat. So you can argue whether or not you need this skill, but still I would have to say, even though I don't like the skill itself, you just never know when it can come in handy, and for that reason I have to recommend it. Well anyways, now we can move on over to skills group 3, and we start things off with Kunstlochner Legacy. Deals very heavy special damage, Mayday's target. This is a special based attack that deals 60 damage to the enemy monster. It costs 31 stamina and it has no cooldown, which means you can use the skill as many times as you need to, and on top of that, if the enemy monster survives, it also gives them daze, which means the enemy's monster's damage output is reduced by 25%, as well as their accuracy is reduced by 25%. And what can I say other than this is a must-have skill? Given this monster's high power, given the fact that this is special based, not metal based, given the fact that it deals 60 damage, and given the fact that it has no cooldown, this is the perfect skill to use against a Timerion on defense. If Timerion does cooldowns activated against you, it's not a problem because of this skill. And this skill certainly has the potential to one-hit the enemy monster, but if for any reason the enemy monster does survive a hit, there's an increased chance that the next attack the enemy monster does will miss, and even if it does land, it's only going to deal 75% of the damage it normally would have. This is certainly a fantastic skill in my opinion. Moving on over, we have Tempering. Target heals by 50%, may give precision to ally, requires cooldown. So here we have the last self skill. It costs 27 stamina and it also has a 2-turn cooldown, and this skill heals your monster by 50%, not 40, not 30, and this skill also gives you precision, which increases your accuracy by 50%. So you pretty much have to make the decision, do you want a self skill that heals you by 30%, removes negative debuffs and has no cooldown so it can be spammable? Or do you want a self skill that has a 2-turn cooldown, but heals you by 40% and gives you a damage boost? Or do you want a self skill with a 2-turn cooldown that heals you by 50%, that's half of your life, and gives you increased accuracy? And I honestly don't think there's a right or wrong answer, it just comes down to preference. I will say though, if you have high level runes, if you have like level 9 or 10 runes and you're willing to put them on this monster, specifically strength runes, then I think Tempering might be better for you, because if you do get possessed on the first turn and you use Tempering, you have increased accuracy, which means your next attack isn't gonna miss. On the other hand, let's say you don't necessarily have the best runes, you might not be able to one-hit the enemy monster. In that case, I would recommend that you go with the self damage boost skill, because this is basically the equivalent of giving your monster one more level 5 strength rune. So at the end of the day, just decide what's best for you. As for the final skill, we have Ball-Peen Hammer. Deals massive metal damage, requires cooldown. Here we have our metal based attack that deals 75 damage to an enemy monster. It costs 28 stamina and it has a 1-turn cooldown. And this skill is just so darn amazing. You're pretty much gonna one-hit the enemy non-metal monster for sure, guaranteed. Which is why I say you might not need to worry about stunning the enemy monster, because you can just knock it out in one hit. And there's not really much to have to say about this skill other than you absolutely have to run it. So with that being said, the two must-have skills on this monster would have to be Kunstlochner Legacy and Ball-Peen Hammer. After that, it's really just preference. My advice once again is to go with Tempering if you have high level runes, or to go with Annealing if your runes aren't necessarily the highest and you don't think you can one-hit the enemy monster. Or if you want to, you can honestly use both of these skills just so you can be ready for either situation. Because keep in mind that you don't necessarily need to run the stun skill, the metal based stun skill, when you have a metal based 75 damage hit. But if you're like me and you just want to be prepared just in case you ever need it, even though most of the time you probably won't need it, go ahead and run Cross-Peen Hammer also. which in that case you just have to decide between one of the self skills, whether it be the skill from skills group 1, skills group 2, or skills group 3. And as for runes for this monster, you would want to go with a typical attacker rune setup, 1 speed rune and 2 strength runes. And as far as using this monster on defense, I wouldn't say that's a good idea just because he's prone to being stunned and possessed. And while the AI could use one of the self skills to prevent him from targeting one of his teammates, it really wouldn't help that much. There are way better metal monsters to put on defense. And so with that being said, that is going to conclude my analysis on Sir Automatronicus. I hope you all really enjoyed this analysis. Let me know what you thought about it. Also let me know what you think about this monster. How do you think he compares to other metal monsters? And also be sure to let me know whether or not you think this monster is going to be getting a lot of usage or not so much usage. And of course, also let me know what other analysis you want to see from me. With that being said, thank you all for watching. Remember to dream big and pursue your passions.